Marvel Spider-Man 2 gives you tons of ways to make Peter and Miles stronger. Better stats, stronger abilities, more powerful gadgets, the list goes on. But what if I took all of that away? Today, I'm going to attempt Marvel Spider-Man 2 on the ultimate difficulty with absolutely zero upgrades. No upgraded abilities, stats, or gadgets. Even a core mechanic such as the focus bar will have no upgrades, meaning that we can at most have one heal stocked up at a time. And since this game gets significantly harder as you progress, I have one simple question. Can you actually beat Spider-Man 2 without any upgrades? So we start a new playthrough on the ultimate difficulty and open up to Peter's first day as a teacher, where he is coincidentally Miles' teacher. Unfortunately, Peter and Miles come to find out that Sandman is attacking the city, so they both suit up to handle the threat. This section has several encounters with small flint Marcos as both Peter and Miles before moving into the large main body. Luckily for us, since this is still the early game and you're not meant to have any upgrades in this point anyhow, this whole section is a piece of cake. During these sections, we unlock Peter's Spider Barrage and Miles' Venom Punch. To be clear, unlocks like this do not apply to the no upgrading challenge, so any ability or gadget unlocked through the main story's progression will not be considered an upgrade. Anyways, we finish off this section fighting as Peter as Miles assists us, which continues to be very easy as we're still in the opening moments of the game. Afterwards, we fly towards Sandman, triggering the final cutscene where Peter and Miles work together to take him out. Now that that's over, we have our first few forced upgrades, where the game makes you unlock something via the menu so that you understand how to unlock things going forward. With that in mind, I consider these in the same vein as story upgrades, so I'll be using them in gameplay. The only other example of this that I can think of happening is the forced health upgrade, which grants us an extra 10 HP, but as you'll see later in the video, that 10 HP doesn't really make a difference. Moving on, we have a few enemy encounters as both Peter and Miles before we're able to progress with the main story, seeing that Peter's first day as a teacher was also his last. So Peter heads home to talk to MJ.
What's wrong?
I got fired.
After spending a good hour in our room crying in shame, we head outside to see MJ reuniting with Harry Osborn, Peter's childhood friend. Luckily for us, this game does not take place in the Sam Raimi universe, so there's no love triangle going on in this friend group. Harry hasn't been around for a while as he was receiving treatment for his illness, so naturally, to celebrate his return, Peter and Harry break out some bikes and go for a ride. After some bonding and reminiscing, we continue with the main story, where Peter and Miles accompany a transport of Scorpion and Mr. Negative. Of course, something goes wrong as Kraven's hunters attack the ship. We fight a whole bunch of them on the top of the ship as Peter. The enemies are a little bit tankier as they are main grunt level enemies that we'll be fighting for the next chunk of the game, but they're still pretty easy to take down. Miles heads inside where he's tricked by Scorpion into setting him free, and after an interaction with Martin Lee, Miles unlocks the blue lightning, giving him the chain lightning ability. After fighting the enemies in and on top of the ship, the hunters manage to escape with Martin Lee, as both Spider-Men are occupied saving civilians. Now that that's over with, Peter makes his way to Harry at the new Emily May Foundation, where he accepts the job offer to work here with him. We then follow up a lead from Miles and Genki, where we find a camouflage hunter base. After taking out the few enemies, we're led to another base, where after doing the exact same thing, we find the data for another base, but this one is much larger. I take out each enemy in this base with stealth until this section where I accidentally drop down, so I'm forced to fight them all at once. This section wasn't too difficult as it's just a bunch of regular hunters. Peter is then jumped by the hunter dogs, which are a much more annoying enemy. These guys are overall pretty tanky while being more annoying enemy to fight. After clearing out that room though, we discover that Kraven is targeting many villains for some reason, including Black Cat, which is a little confusing to me. So Peter sends Miles to go help her. After we catch up to the hunters pursuing her, we take them out all stealthily and clear the remaining enemies, which prompts a Black Cat chow sequence, which ends in a large fight with even more hunters where Black Cat makes an occasional assist. After taking them all out, Black Cat dips to France and we go about our day. Anyhow, Miles then heads to the carnival to check out Mysterious Attraction. When inside, the attraction malfunctions and we're forced to fight off some illusion demon enemies from the first Spider-Man game, which are quite easy to defeat. After escaping, the attraction is closed down and we switch to Peter, who is also at the carnival with MJ and Harry. We play one of those strength test games where that's not supposed to happen, but unfortunately, with ex-criminal, now carnival worker Tombstone being one of Kraven's targets, the carnival is attacked by the hunters. So Peter hops into the fight, which is just more of the same as before, except there feels like a lot more enemies in this area, so it was slightly more challenging. I promise you though, this challenge soars in difficulty in the blink of an eye later in the video. Anyhow, these guys damage one of the rides, so we're forced to leave Tombstone behind to save the innocent people on the carnival. Peter does do a pretty solid job, but with the hunters still attacking and the several cars of civilians in need of saving, he begins to be overwhelmed. Just as all hope is lost, Harry comes to the rescue. After saving the remaining civilians, Peter and Harry bond over their superpowers into the late hours of the night. Moving on, Peter then receives a tip on Tombstone's location from Black Cat, so he heads over to investigate. After taking out all the hunters on the outside of the building, we head inside, stealthily taking down enemies as we make our way through, until Harry shows up, equipped in his Agent Venom suit. Luckily for us, with Harry's help, the hunters are easier to fight, allowing us to swiftly make our way to Tombstone. I do actually die here though, as a hunter dog explodes, which causes me to be stunned as another hunter shoots 5 bullets into my cranium. This is the first taste of a feeling I will get very much used to later on. This time around, I opted to just prioritize the objective of pulling down these supports, skipping this hunter fight for the most part. Harry then blasts through the cage, setting Tombstone free and allowing us to make our escape. escape. After heading back to Emily May with Harry, MJ calls to tell us that Connors' house is surrounded by hunters, and then she's accidentally taken by them. After cooking a whole bunch of hunters, MJ makes it to Connors, who is trapped in a cage, and attempts to set him free. Unfortunately, Raven shows up and injects Connors with lizard serum, beginning his transformation. Just then, Peter and Harry show up, and we start a fight with the hunters. Around this section is where I feel the difficulty does start to pick up in the challenge. The hunters themselves aren't too terrible to fight, but due to the sheer number of them, and the fact that one little mistake means I say goodbye to a large portion of my health bar, things start to ramp up a little bit. It's not unmanageable yet, I'd say, but it's definitely noticeable. Anyways, after taking out all the enemies, Peter's spider senses seem to be taking a little vacation, as Craven fatally wounds him with a knife. Luckily for us though, just before Peter looks like he's going to die, the symbiote transfers itself from Harry onto Peter's body, saving his life and giving him the symbiote suit. With this new suit, we also unlock the symbiote punch ability, and get to beat on some hunters while in symbiote surge mode, which was really satisfying. Afterwards, we reunite with Harry and MJ, where we are unable to transfer the suit back, so the new goal is to find Dr. Connors, cure him of his mutation, and have him help us return the suit to Harry. Oh boy, do I wish we didn't have to do that, as the lizard is my first taste of a real boss fight in this game, and that is not something I'm excited for. Moving on, we have a few fights with some hunters, where I actually do struggle a little bit. I don't know if it's the consecutive hours of gameplay getting to me, or if the game really has just gotten a little bit more difficult, but regardless, whereas before I wasn't ever dying at all, it became a little more frequent as of late. Either way, we track down the hunters to a social club, where we pose as a member of staff in order to search for the serum to cure Connors. But unfortunately, we find diddle squat on that front. The poor fortune continues as we are found by one of the hunters, and are forced to fight a large group inside the social club. This section was actually quite manageable. Most of the hunters were ranged, so I was able to head over and pick them off while dealing with the occasional melee hunter. There was also a brute in this section, but all you have to do is web him up and he becomes easy pickings. Afterwards, we head to the graveyard where we fight a mini boss hunter, which up until now I was kind of ignoring the parry mechanic for the most part, but it's basically a must use for this enemy as he just holds up a shield the whole time if you don't parry his attacks. This does take me a few tries, as like I previously mentioned, I was still quite rusty on my parries, but to defeat him, I would just kind of sit around waiting for him to attack so that I could parry it and get some hits in. Now that he's defeated, a bunch of regular hunters come to join the fight, and I low-key play this like an idiot and have to fight them all over again. But if you take out the moron factor, this was just your average hunter encounter. Now we head into the church where we steal the cure from Craven and simultaneously discover the symbiote's weakness to sound. We then dip out of there in order to search for Connors, but before doing that, we return to Emily May where we are ambushed by hunters. This encounter isn't anything special until we fight another one of those parry brutes, where my rust does begin to wear off, as this was a piece of cake. Luckily for us though, Peter hasn't had the black suit on long enough to affect his humor.
Before we get down to business, there's something I have to tell you. I'm fresh out of honey.
We take this guy on similarly to the other mini-boss enemy, as it's much easier to just parry his attacks than get our hits in. I guess my rust didn't fully go away, as I atrociously mistimed this parry, sending me back to the beginning of the fight. Luckily, this time around, I was slightly less of a moron, leading me to take home the win. Unfortunately, that win didn't stick around for long, as we were forced to fight even more hunters. Yay. Again, there's nothing to really make note of, it's just your average fight with the hunters. After they're taken care of, we scoop up Harry, who has finished Connors' cure, and we head out of there. Moving on, we head to Connors' house to find it swarmed with hunters. We overhear one ask how hard could this mission be?
You have no idea.
They in fact did not have any idea, as it turned out to be pretty easy for them, as my dumbass got overwhelmed a couple of times. I want to take a second to mention one of my favorite strategies I would use to take out enemies in this challenge. I would commonly web up enemies to the wall or floor instead of having to attack them 50 times each time with my weak little base damage hands. I know it's not the most revolutionary strategy, but I thought it was important to bring up, as it was a really good way to relieve some of the pressure in these large encounters. Anyhow, after defeating them, we send Miles after the lizard, as he is closer to his last known location. When we arrive, the area is filled with hunters, so we take the stealth approach until we whittle them down to 2 remaining hunters, where I take them out. Heading further down, Peter arrives just before the lizard comes running through, starting the chase sequence filled with hunters also pursuing him. The lizard does eventually escape, which causes Peter to be a little butthurt and deciding to pursue the lizard on his own. We track him down to this underground area where we're ambushed by the lizard in his secret lab, starting the lizard boss fight. Now this is where the challenge really began to soar in difficulty. With the high damage from the boss and not much way to build up focus for heals, the slightest mistake could force us to restart. Because of this, I was stuck fighting this big green motherfucker for about an hour and 20 minutes. So I'm going to break it down phase by phase to explain how I managed to overcome each one. For the first phase, it actually wasn't bad at all, only taking about 5 minutes to complete, as the lizard's attack weren't too hard to handle, and I was able to deal plenty of damage. I start the fight by immediately pulling the doors below his feet, allowing me to deal a good chunk of damage. From here, I use my abilities and gadgets to start and extend combos, and end up getting him down to half health with the help of my symbiote surge. Without as many gadgets for the rest of the fight, I primarily depend on parrying his attacks, allowing me to stun him and get some damage in. I pull the other vent below him again, before continuing the normal parrying and using abilities to start and extend combos before completing this phase. Phase 2 was a tiny bit harsher, taking me a little under 15 minutes to complete. This time around, the lizard begins the fight on the wall, so we just wait for him to jump down in order to dodge and pull a vent, allowing us to start with a bit of damage. I then whip him up, followed by a parry to extend the combo, as all my abilities are on cooldown. That all changes as they come off cooldown one after another, allowing for a decently long combo. I follow this by doing the usual dodge or parry into a few hits, then rinse and repeat. The lizard then retreats onto the wall, where we're able to whip him up and kick him off before pulling the vent again and beating his ass. We then continue with the same thing, kicking him off the wall whenever he jumps on, and using the usual strategy to extend combos. To end this phase, we dodge a lunge from the lizard and hit him a few times, triggering the cutscene. We then have a good 5-minute chase scene with the lizard outside, only to end up back underground in a slightly different area for phase 3 of the boss. This phase was absolute hell for me, taking me just under an hour to complete. The lizard felt far more aggressive and came equipped with several new attacks. His mix-up game was absolutely phenomenal. He caught me lacking several times, as I would either attempt to dodge an undodgeable attack or attempt to parry an unparryable one. This phase alone caused me to come up with a strategy I like to call the pussy strat, where I attempt to stay in the air as much as I can, only coming down when it's safe to do so in order to deal damage. But enough said, let's go over how I finally managed to overcome this phase of the boss fight. To start the fight, I immediately go into a combo which uses several abilities and a web stun, but as you may be able to tell, the lizard has much more health this time around, as these attacks barely touch his health bar. I then use the most consistent strat I found while attempting to still be aggressive, being to jump in the air, which would avoid an attack if it was an undodgeable, and immediately dodge, which would avoid the attack if it was an unparryable. I rinse and repeat this strategy throughout the whole fight, but otherwise, I pull the vents on the floor or walls whenever I get the chance, allowing me to deal little chunks of safe damage. We continually rinse and repeat the normal strat of extending combos, with the vents as well, and even a little bit of the pussy strategy. I end up getting him webbed up on the wall, which I opt to take advantage of instead of the vent, as each vent is limited to one-time use. After accidentally tanking an attack from the lizard, proceeded by dealing a decent chunk of more damage, I decide to symbiote surge to heal me up slightly, and hopefully deal enough damage to get me just a little bit closer to victory. The surge does pay off as I deal a good chunk of damage, and along the way gain enough focus to heal my health to full. The stress of failing my closest run sets in as I fully embrace the pussy strat for literally the rest of the fight, only touching down to wipe him off the wall or deal damage. We then boot the lizard off the wall one last time, and wait a moment for our cooldowns to recharge, and finally defeat the lizard for good. Come on, yes, finally! Oh my god, that took way too long. With all that effort, it pays me to greatly tell you that this is one of the easiest boss fights in the game. Woohoo. Anyhow, with that complete and the lizard now reverted to Dr. Connors, he advises Peter to remove the symbiote, and he doesn't like that very much. After returning home, Peter has to sleep, but unfortunately, it appears he was followed as hunters arrive at the house. The symbiote takes over and operates his body as he sleeps, and MJ calls Miles in to help out. After we arrive as Miles, we seal Peter and MJ off in this tunnel and begin the fight with the hunters. This fight goes pretty similarly to how recent hunter fights have gone. It's just a little overwhelming at times, but eventually we manage to progress through, even having to fight this brute, which we use the usual parry into button mash strategy until we finally take him out. Miles then saves his worker, who turns out to be a hunter in disguise. Sneaky bastard. Meanwhile, in the tunnel, the symbiote chases down MJ until he loses her, causing it to make its exit. After waking up, Peter learns that Miles has been missing all night, which prompts a character change to Miles, who has been locked up by the hunters. After making our way through a few rooms, we end up in a coliseum facing off against none other than Mr. Negative. We are told this is a fight to the death, where we begin the next boss fight of the run. Now, this boss fight is a bit of a unique scenario. The fight itself was pretty difficult, but it only took me about 35 minutes. The reason for that is, in each of the phases of the fight, I ended up kinda accidentally cheesing it by being able to stun lock Mr. Negative against the wall. This was not a purposeful thing that I went into the fight planning on doing, but I did low-key let it happen opposed to just dropping the stun lock combo. So, with that in mind, I'm not really gonna go over this boss fight too much, as we have 2 more boss fights coming up soon after. After defeating Mr. Negative and going through his little mind segment, Miles decides to take the I have no enemies route and helps Mr. Negative escape, telling him to find the other Spider-Man for help. The reason why Miles didn't just leave with him by, swinging up there beats me, but regardless, Mr. Negative attracts the attention of Peter, and we take control of him as we go to rescue Miles. The game gives us a free infinite symbiote surge as we reach the building, so all these hunters were absolute light work, allowing us to make our way to Kraven. He then shows us a beaten Miles, causing Peter to get slightly irritated, and kicking off phase 1 of my least favorite boss fight in this entire game. To complete this fight in its entirety, it took me just under 2.5 hours. If you were to ask me who my least favorite Spider-Man villain was after the creation of this video, it would undoubtedly be Kraven. But funnily enough, this isn't even the longest boss fight in the whole video. It just made me the most miserable. Anyways, phase 1 wasn't too terrible, taking around 45 minutes to complete. To start the fight, I immediately jump high into the air to dodge his charge attack, then dodge a few more attacks before having a chance to get some damage in. Kraven then throws an axe at us, which we grab with our webs and throw it right back, allowing us to close the distance and get some damage. Now, usually when Kraven goes in for an attack, he does 2 red attacks, followed by either another red, a yellow, or a blue. So, you will see me doing this jump and dodge strategy a lot to avoid possible attacks, before going in and getting some damage. I'm then able to use some of my abilities to chip away at his health and extend combos. I do also use a lot of the throwable objects to my advantage, as after hitting him, he enters a quick stun, allowing me to start an attack. Repeating all of the strategies mentioned, we get Kraven down to low health, where I dodge some of his attacks and retaliate with a symbiote punch, ending phase 1. Kraven then brings us outside to an area with a large bell for phase 2. Whenever he hits the bell, we need to use our webs to web it up, or it will continually stun us. This bell was really annoying, because if he decided to use it at the wrong time, it could be very difficult to get into a position to whip the bell, and it would really fuck me up. But with that said, this phase took roughly an hour and 50 minutes. That's 2 hours of my life forever lost to this dude. So, let's go over how I finally defeated Kraven. The fight starts with us webbing up the bell, and then dodge one of Kraven's attacks, and deal a bit of damage afterwards. We then deal bits of damage when we get opportunities, and use abilities to extend that window. Throwables are also present here, so whenever possible, I will use them to start a combo. I generally use these same combo extending and dodging strategies throughout this run, as they are the most consistent ways to get damage without getting turned inside out. Kraven then pulls out his sniper, which gave me PTSD as it killed me many times. Just the stress Also, having the green sight on me made me feel like I needed to dodge, which would prompt Kraven to immediately shoot it while I was stuck in the animation. This time, however, a tree branch saved the day, as the second dodge was definitely too early. Kraven then summoned some hunter dogs because he's a bitch and can't handle a one-on-one fight, so we focus on them for a while to reduce the amount of things we have to need. So we focus on them for a little while to reduce the amount of things we need to be wary of. After they're taken care of, the fight returns to a normal formula, dodge attacks and get a little tiny chips of damage off, then rinse and repeat. I do have a really close call when Kraven instantly throws the spear at me after an attack, but luckily I survive on 20 HP. This prompts me to symbiote surge to recover a bit of health and deal a good chunk of damage. As soon as the surge is over, Kraven summoned more dogs and unfortunately brought me to an even closer call as I was too distracted to notice him throw another spear at me, leaving me at 5 HP. This caused me to really stress out and fully embrace the pussy strat yet again, only going down to deal damage to the dogs when possible. But after getting a heal and taking out the final dog, it's just a 1v1 between us and Kraven. It's going pretty well as I'm dealing decent damage until I whiff and allow him to get a hit off on me. Fortunately, I'm able to combo off the symbiote punch, lowering his health even more. I shortly after have him at critical health and get a heal, so all's looking well, as I dodge his attacks and going for the final combo, ending the phase. Oh my fucking god! Oh my god. That took me more than 2 fucking hours. With Spider-Man almost as angry as me, he goes to kill Kraven, but Miles stops him. This kicks off the Miles versus Peter boss fight. This boss fight was probably my favorite in the game, as it wasn't very challenging. It took a little getting used to Peter being a smaller character model compared to the other bosses, but after that, I managed to progress quite well. This fight has 3 phases, which only took me about half an hour to clear. Phase 1 took about 15 minutes to complete, so let's see how I did it. To start off the fight, I immediately tanked some hits with some slightly mistimed parries, then got a little combo off, which I extended with the help of the bell. I then used a few abilities and gadgets in succession here to deal a decent chunk of damage to Peter. He has a lot of undodgeable attacks, so the next chunk of this fight is me waiting for him to do them, so then I can parry them and get a couple of hits off. Continuing that in conjunction with my abilities, I'm able to get Peter very low, where I parry his last attack and finish off the phase. Phase 2 took a measly 4 minutes to complete, where it goes exactly the same way, except I just have to look out for one new overhead attack, and this weird throwable one. After getting Peter pretty low, I decided to use my big shock blast and pull the bell shortly after to give me the time to finish him off. Phase 3 only took me about 10 minutes. It was much of the same thing, but with Peter being slightly more aggressive and having this new blue move to look out for. So in my final attempt, I did a slight variation of the pussy strat when necessary, where I stay slightly up in the air where Peter attacks, so I'm more equipped to deal with a mix up of blue or yellow attacks. The best way I found to fight this boss was to kind of stick to him as much as possible, not giving him much room to breathe. With that in mind, I quickly managed to shred Peter's health, and after getting him very low, we have this little awkward exchange as I try my hardest to get the last hit of damage in, ending the fight. Peter then manages to take off the suit, and Miles conveniently has this Oscorp chamber, which he seals it in. Where the hell was he storing that? Peter and Miles reconnect, and now that Peter's himself again, and the symbiote is contained, we head to Harry to explain that we cannot give it back to him. Unfortunately for us, he has a cane, which damages the container enough to allow the symbiote to get free. Honestly, if a sick man with a cane can crack this container and the symbiote can't, maybe we don't need to worry. Oh, he's big now. Venom then bitch throws Peter, kicking up the playable Venom level. This level was so great for me because it was the first level in a while where this challenge didn't really affect it, as Venom has no upgrades to begin with. This means we were able to blitz through every enemy until we finally reached the Kraven fight. This fight was actually pretty easy as well, for the same reason the whole level is easy, being that the challenge doesn't really apply. So after defeating Kraven, Venom bites his head off, which you can tell Harry is not exactly a fan of. We then switch back to Peter, who is in search of Harry. In this search, we find a new enemy type, the symbiotes, which are most definitely more difficult to handle than the hunters. They are very tanky and have several variations. We then switch to Miles, who is working on creating a sound gadget that will make the symbiote encounters slightly more bearable. While doing that, we have to fight some symbiotes, which for the moment is much easier as Miles, as he has more abilities than Peter. After defeating them, we record the final soundbite we need when even more symbiotes appear, which was a bit more challenging than the previous fight. We had to fight this new ranger variant, but after managing to defeat them all, Peter finally shows up. Thanks for nothing, man. We quickly assemble the new gadget when more symbiotes arrive, but we're able to fight them as a duo. After finally defeating them, we head to the subway as we are told by Genki and Rio that the symbiotes are attacking. Venom is there, but we were forced to let him leave in order to help the people in the subway. These green variants of symbiotes are really annoying, but also have very little health. So after we defeat a bunch by the entrance, we head inside where we have to do a defense style level as we wait for the concussive blast to sink and destroy the symbiote core. The 2 minutes of symbiote struggle later, and we manage to clear the subway. Afterwards, we call MJ and tell her not to talk to Harry. Oh, Harry, what's up? So we race home when Harry transforms into Venom and throws us at the 100-ton fridge he recently installed for Peter's birthday. So Peter does struggle to lift it off, but when he does, he decides to stare at Harry in anger and watch him turn MJ into a symbiote. Ha! That's for being with someone else in the newest movie, oh shit. And now we start the Scream fight. This fight was one of the easiest in the game, but it did have 4 phases, so it took me about an hour and 10 minutes, which isn't too terrible. The first fight was the most difficult for me, taking about 45 minutes, so let's dissect that a little bit. To start, I immediately web up Scream, allowing me to get a free combo before pulling the door of this car and stunning her, allowing me to deal even more damage. I took real advantage of the stay in air and dodge strategy to avoid both blue and yellow attacks, as Scream does a mix up of both pretty frequently. I continue to use the stuns from the environment to deal decent damage, but otherwise I just dodge her attacks until I get the opportunity to go in for a combo. I really liked when she would do this throw attack, as it was very easy to dodge and always gave me a free combo afterward. I eventually get her to low health and dodge some of her throwables, then web her up to do a finishing combo, securing phase 1. Phase 2 only took me 6 minutes to complete, as it's very similar to phase 1, which I had gotten pretty accustomed to. The only noticeable notable difference is this new red attack that Scream has during the phase, but we eventually get her to low health and going for a spider barrage, finishing off the phase. Phase 3 takes me just under 20 minutes as we're in a new environment and Scream has a few new attack patterns to get used to, but the overall fight and strategy remains the same. I got Scream down to really low HP, then dodged a string of attacks to finish off the third phase. Phase 4 only took me 8 minutes, pretty solid. It was very similar to phase 3, but Scream felt a lot more aggressive. Luckily for me though, I'd gotten pretty used to her attack patterns by now, so it didn't take too long to adjust to her more aggressive nature. Another nice thing is that the stage resets after your first death, so all the environmental stuns in the area were usable again for this phase. Anyhow, after dodging this string of attacks, I'm able to start a combo where I ended off with one of my abilities and finish the entire fight. Peter gives in, admitting he has a choking kink, which freaks the symbiote out so much that it gives up and fucking dies. Now that that's over with, Peter and Miles head to City Hall as it's been overrun with symbiotes. This fight was mildly annoying. It feels like there's endless symbiotes, and with Peter not having a symbiote of his own, it was not fun. As we slowly cleared out the symbiotes and made our way up the building, we eventually opened this door, releasing the symbiote brute, causing Peter and Miles to get overwhelmed, only to be saved by Mr. Negative. As you can see, the symbiote has re-emerged from within Peter, so Mr. Negative and Miles head into Peter's mind to try to neutralize it. We go through this area with Mr. Negative leading the way, where eventually Miles begins to develop schizophrenia as he's talking to nobody.
That's not what Pete thinks.
Anyhow, Mr. Negative decides to use his powers and attempt to help Peter. So, in the meantime, Miles has to defend him from a symbiote attack. Luckily, we get a new move from Miles here, so in conjunction with his already pretty solid moveset, this fight wasn't too bad. After defeating the symbiotes, Miles heads over to help Mr. Negative, who gives up his powers to neutralize Peter's symbiote, turning it into anti-venom. Now that Peter has access to the symbiote again, his sections become a lot easier. We shred through these symbiote enemies like they're nothing, including the symbiote behemoth, freeing City Hall from symbiote control. We are then shown Venom, who has acquired the symbiote meteorite shard from the underground lab. We then switch to Peter and Miles to reveal the new Miles Morales original suit. Immediately after getting out of the cutscene, I changed the suit back. As Miles, we then have to do another one of these concussive blast sync-up missions, which my dumbass dies in the final moments twice in a row, then a few more times after that. But after finally beating it, Miles taps into the symbiote hive mind for a moment and gets a vision of the subway station. So, switching to Peter, we had to investigate. We arrive and have to take out several symbiotes outside until 2 symbiote behemoths appear. My dumbass dies once, but the second attempt goes much smoother, eventually defeating them both. We then head underground, where we experience my least favorite non-boss level in the entire game. We're stuck in a tiny area with like a million symbiotes that continually spawn for a while the lights also go out intermittently, making it impossible to see what's going on at times. This encounter took me about 50 whole fucking minutes. This fight made me a little angry. Oh my god, bro. I'm actually gonna lose my fucking mind. Anyhow, the winning strategy was to take out the little green symbiotes first, as they're much easier to kill, leaving less room for stray attacks. Then, I would jump from one end of the room to the other, slowly picking off the tankier enemies, and after surviving far enough in, I would pop my symbiote surge to try to take out more of the tougher symbiotes and regenerate some focus. But after lots of struggle, I finally managed to clear this section. Oh my fucking finally. That should not have taken that long. This room is the worst fucking room ever created in a fucking game ever. Moving on, Venom grabs and corners us, but Miles comes to the rescue, allowing us to escape and come up with a plan. But not before this game attempts me with a little prompt. Here's the last chance to upgrade. Nope, we're not upgrading, buddy. Anyways, the plan is for Peter to distract Venom, while MJ and Miles head in to steal the symbiote rock. This plan is what kicks off the final boss fight of the game. This boss fight has a total of 4 phases. The first 2 are as Peter, while the second 2 are as Miles. The phases as Peter are definitely more challenging for me, whether that's due to movesets or just getting used to boss attacks by the time we switch to Miles, or more likely a bit of both, is something I'm not sure of. But anyways, this boss fight took me just under 3 hours. But to be honest, this experience was much better than the Kraven fight, as this was at least split up into more phases, meaning progress was more achievable. Anyhow, let's dive into the first phase. This phase took me about an hour, but I went through many strategies until I was finally able to beat it. At some point, I took note of the fact that while Venom is immune to the webs, shooting them still benefits you a lot, as it increases focus meter and slows down the game, allowing extra time to process what's going on. I continued using the strategy I most notably employed during the Scream fight, being to stay slightly in the air and dodge attacks to reduce damage as much as possible. But anyhow, let's go over the attempt that finally managed to end this phase. We start the fight with an immediate concussive blast, allowing us to deal a bit of damage, but we then immediately dip to one of the other platforms as they feel a lot more wide open. We get a bit more damage off before Venom forces a stage change by gooping up the entire platform, so we switch and pull the stun as soon as Venom lands. After a little while, we head back to the first platform and use the stun there as well. I then play it slow for a little while as I have no focus, but I do stop occasionally to get my licks in. I continue to chip away at his health while also using the web strategy I mentioned to slow down gameplay. We eventually manage to get Venom very low, and with a full bar of health and a full bar of focus, we upped the aggression to finish the fight. We eventually dodge his blue attack, allowing us to go in for the final combo, ending this phase of the fight. Now on to phase 2, which took me another 50 50 minutes to complete. It's very similar to the first phase, except it starts with this section where you need to charge your anti-venom abilities in order to break Venom's shield. This section happens once at the beginning and once in the middle of the phase. Otherwise though, my strategy remained basically the same, using webs to slow down the game and remaining in the air to dodge attacks, which leads me to eventually pull off this run. I start by immediately heading into the air, where I remain for this entire segment as my abilities charge. After that's done, I head down to clear Venom's shield and start the fight for real. We play this just like the first one, using the usual strategy to avoid yellow and blue attacks pretty consistently, and getting damage in when I can. We begin to make progress in this fight. Luckily for me, just like in the Scream fight, the sound stuns are reusable again after the first attempt, so we're able to use them again during this phase as well. Anyhow, after getting Venom to under half health, he begins the shielded phase again, where we have to charge up our abilities to be able to deal damage again. But after charging them up, we hit Venom with the abilities, breaking his shield. Just a little while after, I pop my final symbiote surge of the playthrough to lower Venom down to critical health, which allows us to dodge the final attack and deal enough damage to finally end the phase. Now that we've been fighting for a while, Venom realizes that the symbiote rock has been stolen, so he takes Peter over to Emily May, where Miles and MJ have the rock. Miles does a totally epic backflip as Venom enters with a note to commission Peter, starting the first phase of the Miles vs. Venom fight. The two Miles phases are significantly easier than Peter's in my opinion. This first phase took me a bit more than 35 minutes to complete, so not too bad. He has two forms in this fight, his regular form and his flying form, which after playing against for a while become really easy to handle. But anyhow, let's take a look at the final attempt at Venom phase 3. To start, we dodge Venom's throwables and throw a third one back at him, allowing us to start a combo. I save most of my moves and gadgets throughout this flying section because, as I said before, after you get into the flow of the few attack options Venom has, combined with slowing down time with webs, the flying form becomes quite easy to handle. We eventually knock Venom out of this mode, where we begin to go buck wild with our abilities and gadgets, dealing a significant chunk of damage. We continue with the usual strategy of remaining in the air and letting us take minimal damage, apart from a few mistakes here and there. We get quite a good combo on him here, using two of our abilities, sending Venom back into his flying form. This last bit of the fight goes very well, as I'm not worrying about rationing our abilities any longer, and I just want to end this phase. So after going ham, we managed to get Venom down to low HP when we mistimed both of his range attacks, but we barely survived to scrape out the victory. With phase 3 now completed, we move on to the final phase of the final fight in the game, Venom phase 4. This phase took me roughly 30 minutes, so not too bad at all. It was mostly the same as phase 3, except some of Venom's flying attacks were made a little more difficult to handle, and he got a new attack in his normal form, which combined with my strategy remaining in the air was actually more of a benefit, as it gave me a free combo every time he did it. But with that being said, let's look at how I beat the final phase of the Venom boss fight. We start by immediately starting a combo using the few abilities and gadgets, then throwing a stun at Venom, starting a whole nother combo. He then decides to do his new easily avoidable attack, so we get even more free damage, which we follow up by throwing another stun at him and damaging him even further. One thing that has been very frustrating during this phase was that if I ever dodged one of his attacks and web zipped in, Venom would immediately block my attacks, meaning a lot of damage I would normally get in the other phases is not even possible to get here. But anyhow, we continue damaging him when possible through the use of dodges, abilities, and gadgets, especially when he would just love to give us free little combos here and there, eventually damaging him enough to send him into flying mode. Venom was much easier to handle in flying mode, allowing us to deal major damage in a short amount of time. Primary course of action would be to dodge Venom's attack, deal a bit of damage, then fire off a few webs to slow down time, and then dodge whatever we saw coming in. Then rinse and repeat. The strategy wasn't foolproof, but it was quite consistent. With all my abilities exhausted, I kept repeating the strategy until I made a mistake, allowing Venom to grab me, but luckily it didn't do enough damage to insta-kill me. So yet again, at low health, I dodge a string of Venom's attacks and go in to deal the final bit of damage, completing the entire game. Peter awakens, and after a really cool mid-air tag team fight, he is forced to use his anti-venom abilities on Harry, killing him. But luckily for us, we have a personal defibrillator who brings Harry back to life, but his condition is still not good. But honestly, fuck that guy. I do not care. I was fighting for the last 3 hours. Leave him alone. All jokes aside, the challenge was a lot more difficult than I expected. I did not expect 3-hour-long boss fight in a Spider-Man game, no matter the challenge. And maybe I'm just ass, I don't really know. But regardless, we completed this challenge in 19.5 hours. Wow. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.